In this video, I will be covering 5 rules in subject-verb agreement. But before we go to the first rule, let me first review a little bit on subject and verb determination. So, recall when you were young, you were taught about subjects being the ones that are being talked about. And the verbs are the ones which talked about action or states of being. Now comes the question, why do we need to determine which one is the subject and which one is the verb? Because if you cannot determine which one is the subject and the verb, you cannot make one agree with the other. So it's important that we know which one in our sentence is the subject and the verb. Now, let's go to the first rule now. Rule number 1 in subject-verb agreement. Subjects and verbs must agree in number. This is the cornerstone rule that forms the background of the concept. Now, again, we are taken to a terminology here, which is number. Do we mean number like 1, 2, 3? Is that what we mean in grammar? No. In grammar, when we say number, we mean singular or plural. Let's take a look at the table here. In this table, you have here, under singular, you have a subject, he. And that subject is a pronoun. Recall that a pronoun is a substitute of a noun. Look at the verb. The verb that is given for he is asks. Notice that you have an S after the base verb ask. Why is that so? Because the rule in grammar is if the subject is singular, the verb must be singular. And singular verbs generally have S or ES added to the base verb. So that's why you have asks here being paired with he, because he is singular. Let's take a look at the second example. Under plural, you have the men ask, the men ask. So, why are we not having S in our verb here for men? Why only the word ask? Why only the verb ask? Because men is plural and therefore it must be paired with a plural verb. And if a verb is plural in present tense, it has no S or ES. Okay? So that's rule number 1. Let's take a look at more examples for rule number 1. Letter A. He asks many questions about his work. Our subject is he and our verb is asks. It is so because our subject he is singular and therefore it will need a singular verb. And recall that singular verbs have either S or ES. Moving on. Example B. We ask for help every day. Now, our subject is we, a plural pronoun, and therefore, our verb must be plural. That's why you are not seeing S or ES here in letter B example. Moving on to letter C. The dog growls when it is angry. Our subject here is the dog or dog. It's singular, and therefore, our verb must have S. So that's why you have growls. Okay? And the last example, the dogs growl when they are angry. Our subject now is dogs, plural, and therefore we should not have S or ES in our verb. Hence, we have the verb growl only. Okay? So those are the examples for rule number 1. Let's move now to rule number 2. Rule number 2 says, singular indefinite pronouns like each, everyone, everybody, someone, somebody, anyone, anybody, nobody, no one, not one, either, and neither take singular verbs. First off, why do we call pronouns indefinite? They are called indefinite because we are not certain as to who is being referred to. Like when you say everyone, everyone could mean that person, this person, okay? So there is no exact reference. That's why we call it indefinite. Now, for indefinite pronouns, according to our first item here for rule number 2, indefinite pronouns have singular forms. Those that I mentioned are the singular pronouns, singular indefinite pronouns. And remember our cornerstone rule in subject-verb agreement. If the subject is singular, your verb must be singular. So, given that you have an indefinite pronoun as your subject, you will be needing a singular verb for the subjects. Okay? Next, indefinite pronouns all, both, few, many, others, and several are plural, and therefore they take plural verbs. Okay? So, for indefinite pronouns, guys, we also have singular and plural. So, you have the list there with you. There are also some tricks here because there are indefinite pronouns which can be used singularly and plurally. So, take a look at this. Some indefinite pronouns can either be singular or plural depending on the antecedent, like all, some, any, more, most, or none. Now, I have here a word antecedent. What do you mean by the word antecedent? The meaning of the word antecedent, guys, is the word referred to. Okay? So, if it is in Filipino, we say, ang tinutukoy. Or in the Cebuano language, we say, ang gipasabot. Okay? So, that's the antecedent. So, consider all, some, any, more, most, and none. There are 6 of them. When you see them as your subjects in your sentences, you have to be very cautious because they can be plural or they can also be singular, okay, depending on their antecedents or depending on the words that they refer to. Okay? So if they are referring to singular antecedents, then they can be used singularly. If they are referring to plural antecedents, then they are used plurally. Alright? Let's take a look at the examples for rule number 2. First example, nobody except the juniors is admitted to the course. Look at nobody. Nobody is a singular indefinite pronoun as what you have seen in the list previously. So it is singular, therefore it will need a singular verb. That's why we're using is, not are. Our subject here is nobody, not juniors. Okay? So you have to be careful in determining really which one is the subject because sometimes you can be confused. Okay? But remember that the subject is the one that's being talked about in the sentence. Okay, example number 2. Most of the pie was eaten. Okay? Remember most? The last item of rule number 2 says there are indefinite pronouns which can be used singularly and plurally. And most is one of them. So you have to be very careful because in cases when all, some, any, more, most, and none are involved, you have to consider the antecedent. Remember the antecedent? The word referred to. So in letter B, or in the second example, it says, most of the pie was eaten. Look at most. It's one of the 6 tricky indefinite pronouns. Tricky because they can mean singularly and plurally. So therefore, we have to take a look at the antecedent. Okay? The antecedent here, or the word referred to here by most, is pie. Notice that pie is singular. That's why we are using was, not were. Okay? So, most of the pie was eaten. In the next example, again, most is our subject. And remember, most, it is one of the 6 tricky indefinite pronouns because it can be used plurally and singularly. Again, we have to make reference to our antecedent. So, what is the antecedent of most? Here in this example, most of the hinges have been oiled. Our antecedent for most is hinges, plural, right? And therefore, the plurality of the word hinges will now determine what kind of verb we will be using for this sentence. So that's why we're having have as our verb have been oiled because hinges is plural. Okay? So those are the examples for rule number 2 of our SV agreement. Number 3. The intervening words or group of words that come between the subject and the verb, such as together with, like, such as well as, along with, in addition to, in some adjective clauses, do not affect agreement. Okay? Remember, intervening words do not affect agreement. Now, first, why do we call it intervening words or group of words? We call them intervening words or group of words because in between your subject and your verb, you have a word or group of words coming together, interrupting your subject and your verb. And we call them intervening because they can be confusing. No? They can confuse you as you pair your subject with a particular verb. So, remember the expressions which are listed here, together with, like, such as, etc., etc. So, when you encounter them, then rest assured that they do not have bearing to your subject and verb agreement. If your subject is singular, it remains singular. If it is plural, it remains plural, even if it is intervened or interrupted by a singular noun, okay, or pronoun. So, take a look at the examples here. Example number 1. The dog that is chewing on my jeans is usually adorable. Look at here, between your dog and your is, no? Between your subject and your is, your verb, you have a clause here, that is chewing on my jeans. It comes between your subject and your verb, and it can be confusing because you have a word here which is jeans, which is a noun. So you can confuse it and you might identify it as your subject when in fact it is not. So you have to stick to your identification of the subject. So your subject here is dog, it's singular, and therefore even if you're seeing jeans, which is plural, that's not what we are talking about. We're talking about the dog. And therefore, the verb that you will need here is and not are. Okay? Number 2, the teacher, along with her students, enters the museum. Now again, let's identify the subject. In this sentence, your subject is the teacher, singular, right? And therefore, you have in mind that for singular subjects, you will need a singular verb. So that's why we have the subject, the teacher, paired with enters, which is a singular verb. Okay? Because along with her students is only an intervening group of words. Even if you have students here, which is a plural noun, it is not our subject. It's not being talked about in the sentence. It is only an intervening group of, it is only part of the intervening group of. The 4th rule in subject-verb agreement is involving prepositional phrases. So let me begin with 4A. Prepositional phrases between the subject and the verb usually do not affect agreement. Now, you ask, what are prepositional phrases? Prepositional phrases are groups of words which are beginning with prepositions. What are prepositions? These are the words which are illustrating direction or position, like on, in, at, under, inside, towards. So those are the words which are prepositions. So they can become prepositional phrases if those prepositions are accompanied by other words. Okay? Now, they can be confusing when you have prepositional phrases because prepositional phrases contain nouns or pronouns. They can be confusing, no, when they come in our sentences. So, but stick to your identification of your subject. Know where your subject is, because by knowing, again, we mentioned earlier that by knowing your subject, you would know what verb to pair with it. So, in this example, the colors of the rainbow are beautiful. Your subject here is the word colors, plural in form. And therefore, even if you are having here a prepositional phrase of the rainbow, which is containing a singular noun rainbow, that has nothing to do with your subject. So, since your subject colors is plural, it will remain plural and it will need a plural verb. That's why we're having are as our verb. Okay? Rule 4b. The only time when the object of the preposition factors into the decision of plural or singular verb forms is when noun and pronoun subjects like all, some, any, more, most, none, and mathematical expressions like half of, 10% of, etc. are followed by a prepositional phrase. In these sentences, the object of the preposition determines the form of the verb. Let me repeat that. The object of the preposition determines the form of the verb. Earlier, we talked about prepositional phrase. I said a prepositional phrase begins with a preposition and it is accompanied by other words. So it can be accompanied by a noun or a pronoun. That noun or pronoun accompanying your preposition, which forms the prepositional phrase, is now the object of the preposition. I repeat, the noun or the pronoun which accompanies your preposition is the object of the preposition. So, be very careful in identifying the object of the preposition, because when you are following Rule 4b, no, which involves all, some, any, more, most, or none, and mathematical expressions, then your object of the preposition is the determining factor for our decision to make it singular or plural. So, if you have, for example, in example number 1, all of the chicken is gone. You have all. Remember, all can be singular or plural. We learned that earlier. Now, we will determine the object of the preposition in this sentence. So, of the chicken is our prepositional phrase in this sentence. Our object of the preposition, or the noun which accompanies our preposition, is chicken. Now, notice that chicken is singular, and therefore, since this is singular, your all now is taken singularly, and therefore, it will need a singular verb. That's why we have is gone as our verb. So, all of the chicken is gone. Take a look at example number 2. All of the chickens are gone. Notice that same you have the subject all. And it is accompanied now by a different form of prepositional phrase, having now a noun or the object of the preposition chickens, which is plural. And therefore, remember that when we have all, some, any, more, most, and none, and other mathematical expressions, our object of the preposition matters because it will now factor into our decision of considering it as singular or plural. So chickens is plural, therefore all here as our subject is considered plurally, and therefore it will need a plural verb. Hence, our verb are gone, not is gone, as compared to the first example. Moving on to the third example. Half of the students attend the field trip. We have a prepositional phrase here, of the students. And our object of the preposition or the noun accompanying our preposition is students, plural in form. Therefore, the half of here, which is a mathematical expression, is considered plurally, and therefore it will need a plural verb. So our verb here, which is attend, makes sense. Okay? So that's it. 5A. Singular subjects joined by or, nor, either or, and neither nor require a singular verb. For example, neither my niece nor my nephew expects to go to Davao. First, let's identify which ones are the subjects. In this example, we have two subjects here, my niece and my nephew, joined by neither nor. Okay? So you have two singular subjects, my niece and my nephew, joined by neither nor. And since you have two singular subjects joined by neither nor, and our rule 5A says singular subjects joined by or, nor, either or, and neither nor require a singular verb. So that's why our verb here, expects, is supposed to be the verb because our subjects, my niece and my nephew joined by neither nor, are taken singularly according to rule number 5A. Okay? So, second example, either Mary or Jane is behind all these. Again, let's identify our subjects. So we have two subjects here, Mary and Jane. However, these two subjects are joined by either or, which is one of the connectors in our rule number 5. So, again, if you have connectors like or, nor, either or neither nor, those words that they connect, if they are both singular, will be taken singularly. So even if we have two subjects here or two words here, Mary and Jane, but since they are connected by either or, they will become singular. They are taken singularly, and therefore they will need singular verb. That's why we have is as our verb. So either Mary or Jane is behind all these. Okay? Moving on. Rule 5B. Rule 5B says plural subjects joined by or, nor, either or, neither nor require a plural verb. So, in the earlier rule, if you have two singular subjects joined by or, nor, either or, and neither nor, you will need singular verb for it because you have singular subjects joined by any of those connectors. But here, you have plural subjects joined by those four connectors. So since you are joining plural subjects, so you will be needing plural verbs also. So in this example, neither the foremen nor the workers are here. Why is our verb are? Because our subjects now joined by neither nor are plural. Foremen is plural, workers is plural, so therefore that will pluralize the whole subject. So therefore you will need plural verb. Okay? What about 5C? Rule 5C. Rule 5C in subject-verb agreement says, if two subjects connected by either or, neither nor, or nor, differ in person or number, the verb agrees with the nearer subject to the verb. What does that mean? If previously you learned that if both subjects are joined by nor, or, neither nor, either or, if both subjects are singular, you will need a singular verb. If both subjects joined by or, nor, neither nor, either or are plural, then you will be needing a plural verb. But in this 5C rule, you have two subjects joined by same connectors or, nor, either or neither nor. However, the number of our subjects now differ. Differ meaning one is singular and the other is plural. So we have a separate rule for that. And the rule says, whichever is nearer to the verb, no, between the two, whichever is nearer to the verb, that's the one that will agree with the verb. It means that if the one nearer to the verb is a singular subject or singular form, then you will need a singular verb. If the one nearer to the verb is plural in form, then you will need a plural verb. Let's take a look at the example. Either the workers or the owner is responsible. Let's look at this. We have two nouns here, workers and owner, connected by either or. That's our connector, either or. Notice that the two nouns connected by either or differ in number. The workers is plural, the owner is singular. And the rule says, whichever is closer to the verb, that is the one that will agree with the verb. In this example, the owner is closer to the verb, right? And the owner is singular. Therefore, we will need is and not are. Okay? Next example. Either the owner. So we now we change the position now of the subjects. Either the owner or the workers are responsible. So as we move the two subjects, we need to determine which one is closer to the verb. In this example now, the workers being plural is closer to your verb are. Therefore, plural workers, you will need plural verb. Okay? Last example. Neither the midwife nor the twins are ready. The twins is closer to our verb, and therefore this is plural, and so we need a plural verb are. Okay? So for rule number 5, we have 3. Okay? For rule number 5, remember that we will take note of the connectors or, nor, either or, neither nor. So when they connect, again, when they connect all singular subjects, then you will be needing singular verb. If they connect all plural subjects, then you will be needing plural verbs. If you have a situation or a condition of mixed nouns being connected, then the one closer to the verb will agree with the verb. That means if the subject closer to the verb is singular, you need a singular verb. If the subject closer to the verb is plural, then a plural verb is needed. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Yes, don't forget to hit that tiny bell so you will be notified of my next video. See you in my next video, guys. Bye!
Whenever your heart is broken, don't ever forget you're golden.